Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is an elite secret student society of Yale University which has been looked at with suspicion regarding the amount of students who are recruited and later end up in positions of immense power and success. Just to list a small handful of its members who swore its oath in their college years, we have U.S. President William Howard Taft, U.S. President George H.W. Bush, U.S. President George W. Bush, Steven Schwartzman, the co-founder and CEO of Blackstone Inc. with a $40 billion net worth, Frederick W. Smith, the billionaire founder, president, and CEO of FedEx, William S. Paley, the founder and longtime CEO of CBS. This list goes on and on, including a total of 8 U.S. senators, 7 U.S. congressmen, and 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices. It began as an exclusive fraternity for the elite where the sons of America's wealthiest families could forge bonds away from prying eyes, with its headquarters located in a windowless building on campus known as the Tomb. Every spring, during the ritual known as Tap Day, 15 juniors deemed to be the top of the campus are tapped on the shoulder. Star athletes, brilliant scholars, natural leaders, and children of influential families. They're invited to join, and should they enter, they're sworn to silence for life. According to accounts from former members and investigative journalists, initiates reportedly lie naked in coffins while confessing their deepest secrets and sexual histories to their fellow bonesmen. They meet twice weekly inside the Tomb, a building rumored to contain disturbing relics, including the stolen skulls of Apache leader Geronimo, Mexican revolutionary Pancho Villa, and even former President of the United States Martin Van Buren. The Tomb is apparently filled with human skulls, coffins, pentagrams, and other occult artifacts. Leaked accounts from defectors, hidden cameras, and stolen documents paint initiation rituals as a blend of horror show and psychological breakdown. New recruits, blindfolded and let in as knights, are reportedly shoved into a coffin for a mock death and rebirth, emerging to confess every intimate detail of their sexual past in a ritual called connubial bliss, followed by their full life story in life history sessions that last hours. Older members in robes will chant, scream about devils, stage mock killings with knives plunged into actors covered in fake blood. The initiates are forced to wrestle naked in mud slicked with oil, or apparently even blood, kiss actual skulls while vowing loyalty. Their emblem is a skull and crossbones inscribed with the number 322. Even to this day, it's still unclear what 322 means. Some speculate that it marks the death of the Greek orator Demosthenes, who died in 322 BC. Demosthenes was an advocate of Greek democracy and opposed Philip II of Macedon, or Alexander the Great's father. His death marked the end of Athenian democracy and the rise of oligarchic rule, which some believe Skull and Bones adopted to symbolize a new demise of democracy and the rise of something perhaps more controlled. Others suggest it references Genesis 3:22, in which God states, "The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat, and live forever." These are just 2 theories, though, and the true meaning, again, remains one of the Order's many closely guarded secrets. This concentration of influence has obviously fueled conspiracy theories, with claims that Skull and Bones has a level of control over the US government or the CIA, with others insisting that it's a branch of the Illuminati orchestrating a New World Order. I'm not really sure how much of this I actually believe, but again, the concentration of influence is very weird. Then again, maybe it has something to do with nepotism, but who knows? Either way, nothing really illustrates the society's grip on American power like the 2004 presidential election. During the election, the Democratic nominee John Kerry and Republican nominee George W. Bush were both members of the Skull and Bones secret society. When NBC's Tim Russert pressed Bush about their shared membership, the president's response was revealing in its evasiveness.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
Kerry was equally silent when questioned, with many saying he looked visibly uncomfortable during the interview.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
Clearly, there's a dark secret here that neither candidate wants to let out, or perhaps is even capable of letting out without consequence. Kerry's campaign spokesperson told reporters, "Kerry has nothing to say about that subject. Sorry." The society owns a 40-acre private island where they apparently all go to network and maintain the relationships that they made while in college and in the society at large. Many argue that this, at the very least, results in institutionalized cronyism, sort of an old boys network that undermines the meritocracy that our society claims to be built upon. GEC-Marconi scientist deaths. Up until 1999, GEC-Marconi was one of Britain's largest defense contractors, especially during the Cold War. They supplied the British Ministry of Defense with advanced radar systems, electronic warfare equipment, aviation electronics, underwater weaponry, and secure communications tech. Between 1982 and 1990, at least 25 British scientists and engineers working on some of the most classified defense projects of the Cold War died under a wave of highly suspicious, unexplained circumstances. While authorities dismissed the deaths as tragic coincidences attributable to workplace stress, the concentration of fatalities among a small group of highly trained specialists working on interconnected classified projects has led many to wonder if it's possible that they were the victims of a coordinated attack, either from foreign entities or from within, perhaps to prevent them from revealing or accidentally leaking secrets regarding defense programs. Some have speculated that the deaths are linked to the employees' involvement in defense collaborations between the United States and the United Kingdom during the 1980s, as GEC-Marconi developed technologies like radar, avionics, and command systems that could have supported the United States' Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI, also known as Star Wars, a space-based missile shield against Soviet threats. I think it goes without saying that this was a highly secretive project, and perhaps they went to great lengths to ensure that their secrets didn't get out. I'll present the information here for you all to think over, and we can discuss what we think actually went on here in the comments, because honestly, I'm not really sure what to think. The first death in this string was that of Dr. Keith Bowden, a 46-year-old computer scientist and contractor for GEC-Marconi, who specialized in supercomputers and aircraft control systems. After a social event in March of 1982, his car plunged off a bridge into an abandoned rail yard, killing him instantly. Police blamed drunk driving and excessive speed, but his friends who were with him that evening insisted that he hadn't drank at all that night. An independent investigator later discovered that the tires on his vehicle had apparently been replaced with worn-out ones. This incident, initially dismissed as a tragic accident, is now seen as the first in this disturbing pattern of mysterious deaths. By 1985, the deaths escalated. Roger Hill, a 49-year-old radar designer at Marconi, was found dead from a shotgun blast at his home. It was reported that this was by his own hand. That November, Jonathan Wash, a 29-year-old digital communications expert who had worked at GEC and a secret research center for British Telecom, drowned after reportedly falling from a hotel window.
Is this all just coincidence, or has international espionage produced a string of murders? Stone Phillips went to Europe.
Vimal Dajipai, a 24-year-old computer software engineer who worked on the Stingray torpedo, told his wife he would be working late one evening in August 1986. Instead, he drove 100 miles to Bristol, a city with which he had no known connection, and fell 240 feet from the Clifton Suspension Bridge. His body was found with his trousers around his ankles and a small puncture wound on his left thigh. The police stopped his cremation while it was in the middle of being conducted to continue with a deeper investigation, specifically into this mark, but it remains unexplained to this day. The Bristol coroner returned an open verdict, unable to determine whether it was suicide, accident, or something more sinister. 2 months later, Ashad Sharif, a 26-year-old computer programmer at Marconi who had been working in the same section as Dajipai, was found nearly decapitated in his car, also near Bristol. Apparently, he had tied a rope from his neck to a tree, then accelerated in his car, potentially using a metal object to jam the pedal down. Authorities concluded that this had also occurred by his own hand. He left a taped farewell message, but strangely, family members who listened to the recording described that it contained absolutely zero indication of depression and no justification or reasoning, especially since he was in the process of planning his marriage to his fiancée. He simply had said his goodbyes in the recording. Again, he had no connection to Bristol, and the verdict was ultimately ruled to be a suicide. The deaths accelerated dramatically in 1987. Richard Pugh was found in his flat with his feet bound, a plastic bag over his head, and a thick rope coiled around his body. The verdict amounted to a bedroom misadventure. Dr. John Britton was next. He was a 52-year-old IT specialist working on space weapon simulations. This death followed shortly after a tense work trip to the United States. According to his daughter, Jane, he returned home pale, withdrawn, and unable to sleep properly. He would sit for long periods, repeatedly saying things like, "They know where I am, and I think something is going to happen to me. I'm worried they might come for me." He began obsessively checking locks multiple times and pulling curtains closed the moment it began to get dark outside. According to her, he refused to discuss even the most general details of the trip, which was out of character for him. Jane and her mother directly attributed this sudden onset of paranoia and dread to whatever had occurred during that American visit. Following a suspicious brake failure in his car, he would pass away in the same month as Richard Pugh of carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage. His death was deemed an accident. In the following month of February 1987, 3 more Marconi scientists would die in disturbing and suspicious ways. Marconi engineer David Skeels also died from carbon monoxide poisoning in his car. Marconi space and defense engineer Victor Moore from a drug overdose after leaving a high-profile project. Peter People, a 46-year-old Ministry of Defense scientist at the Royal Military College of Science, also died that month. His classified research on electronic surveillance and underwater systems directly supported GEC-Marconi's defense contracts. He was discovered jammed under his car with the engine running. And no, he wasn't working on his car or anything like that. His wife returned home from a weekend away to find him dead in the family garage, with the car still running, the garage door closed, and exhaust fumes accumulating lethally. People was discovered lying on his back beneath the vehicle with his mouth and nose positioned directly in line with the exhaust pipe. Forensic experts and investigators later described this position as being physically impossible for a conscious person to achieve alone. As a result, the ruling behind his death was left as open. The following month, in March, David Sands, an engineer at ESAMS, a subsidiary of GEC, crashed his car, which was loaded with 2 full gasoline cans, into an abandoned cafe at 80 miles an hour. The resulting fire burned his body beyond recognition. Only the discovery of his teeth led to his ultimate identification through dental records. Again, apparently this was all done by his own hand. John Whiteman was a British scientist and systems analyst employed by GEC-Marconi, where he contributed to classified defense projects involving torpedo guidance and submarine detection technologies during the Cold War. He was found having drowned in his bathtub surrounded by pill bottles, but autopsy reports revealed that none of these substances were in his system. He hadn't ingested any of the pills or even had any alcohol. This led to yet another open verdict. Other 1987 victims include Michael Baker and Stuart Goodings in car accidents, Frank Jennings from unspecified causes, Russell Smith, who jumped off a cliff, and Mark Wisner, a 24-year-old found with a plastic bag and cling film over his face. Apparently another sexual misadventure ruling. Alistair Beckham, a 50-year-old software engineer employed by Plessy Defense Systems, a company with close ties to GEC-Marconi through joint defense projects, was reportedly involved in developing classified naval software and potentially even programs under the U.S. Strategic Defense Initiative, which, again, a wide range of the victims on this list might have had ties to. On the 28th of August 1988, after a normal Sunday of gardening and driving his wife Mary to her part-time nursing job, Beckham was found electrocuted in his locked garden shed in Portsmouth, England, with bare electrical wires wrapped around his chest connected to a live mains outlet. A handkerchief was stuffed in his mouth as a gag, and no suicide note was present, leading to yet another open verdict from the coroner, who could not definitively rule it as accident or, again, something else. Most peculiar about this incident in particular was the fact that Ministry of Defense officials swiftly appeared at his home to remove work-related documents literally hours after his death. That same year, John Ferry, a 60-year-old Marconi director, apparently jammed live wires into his dental fillings, and he died of electrocution. The final case I'm going to discuss here, because I think you get the picture by now, is that of Avtar Singh Gita. His case is a bit different from the others because he didn't actually die. He had been working on Ministry of Defense-funded underwater acoustic projects that supported GEC-Marconi's submarine detection and torpedo technology. On the 8th of January 1987, he seemingly vanished into thin air while conducting routine tests at Foremark Reservoir, leaving his car and belongings behind. For 5 months, nobody had any idea where he had gone. It was only in June of 1987 that he was discovered alive, but suffering from total amnesia in a Paris clothing sweatshop where he had been working under an assumed name with no recollection of his disappearance or journey across the English Channel. Eventually, he would recover his pre-1987 memories and resumed normal life, but the complete blank for those 5 months and the peculiar timing of this occurring during the Marconi deaths has never been explained. Many have speculated that he was abducted, interrogated, or experimented on. So, yeah, this is an absolute rabbit hole of a case. There are still other incidents I didn't even cover in relation to this, simply due to time constraints, but these are the strangest ones I've come across. With all that being said, if these weren't accidents, and these cases are indeed each connected somehow, who did it, and why? It seems pretty obvious to me that if there is a conspiracy here, it had something to do with preserving national security and defense secrets. But who was doing the killings? Was it the British government? Was it Marconi itself? Or some foreign entity, maybe the United States government or the CIA, due to the employees' connections to Star Wars or Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative? Could they have been assassinated by the KGB in an attempt to sabotage SDI's space-based missile defense system from thwarting Soviet attacks? Something like 6 to 10 of these scientists who died in this string of deaths seem to have potentially had connections to the United States Strategic Defense Initiative, though due to the nature of these projects, with them being extremely secretive, it's very difficult to say for sure who was and wasn't connected to this program. Officially, Britain and Marconi themselves have denied any connection between these cases, and they have also denied that any of these employees were working on the Strategic Defense Initiative. No formal inquiry has found any evidence of foul play in connection to these cases. Suchir Balaji. Suchir Balaji was a 26-year-old Indian-American researcher who had made significant contributions to artificial intelligence technology at OpenAI. He was born in Florida and was raised in Cupertino, California, growing up as something of a child prodigy when it came to programming. He graduated from UC Berkeley with a computer science degree in 2021 and was immediately recruited by OpenAI, where he worked for nearly 4 years. At OpenAI, he made important contributions in the process by which data would be gathered and organized for training advanced AI models like ChatGPT-4. His work was apparently so essential that he was deemed irreplaceable by the highest levels of the company. However, by August of 2024, Balaji was reaching an inescapable rift between the company's direction and his own morals. He quit, citing ethical concerns about how AI was being developed, and even told friends he believed it would harm humanity if it continued in the current direction. He began plans to start a nonprofit focused on machine learning and neuroscience, shifting his focus into the ways technology could be applied in a clearer, more positive direction. Just 2 months after his departure from OpenAI in October of 2024, Balaji went public with explosive accusations against the company. He argued that OpenAI's generative AI tools, namely ChatGPT, violated US copyright laws. He broke down how these models were being trained on vast amounts of data scraped from the internet, including copyrighted books, articles, and other creative works, without permission or compensation to the original creators, the humans behind the actual information that was feeding into the models. He explains in depth how this process works and why it doesn't qualify as fair use under the law, a legal defense which OpenAI relies on. Balaji warned that their practice of training AI models on human-made work with the explicit goal of emulating and creating artificial copies of said work could kill the open internet by destroying the economic incentives for humans to create and share content online. He positioned himself as a whistleblower, ready to testify in ongoing lawsuits against OpenAI brought by authors, publishers, and the New York Times itself. He was named in a court filing as someone with potentially crucial documents for these cases. OpenAI tried to defend itself, insisting that their training methods were grounded in fair use principles that support innovation, but Balaji's claims added fuel to a growing fire of legal challenges that were set to cost the company billions. Take a wild guess what happened next. Balaji was found dead in his San Francisco apartment on the 26th of November 2024. An apparent suicide. A single gunshot wound to the head. The gun was, in fact, his own, registered to him and purchased earlier that year. The apartment's door was deadbolted from the inside, with no signs of forced entry. Toxicology tests revealed high blood alcohol levels along with amphetamines and high levels of GHB, a depressant sometimes called the date rape drug. Authorities noted he had recently searched online for brain anatomy information, and they found no evidence of foul play. Friends and colleagues would state after this that Balaji had seemed cheerful, celebrating his birthday the day before and making plans for vacations and future projects. There was no suicide note, and those close to him insisted he showed no signs of depression or distress. As a result of this disturbing discrepancy, Balaji's parents refused to accept the ruling. They hired private investigators to probe further and commissioned a second autopsy, which they say revealed inconsistencies pointing to homicide, apparently including the fact that the bullet had entered from an angle that would have been difficult or physically impossible for Balaji to have inflicted on himself. It doesn't seem that this secondary autopsy has been released by his parents, so I'm not going to speculate on that particular piece any further. What's actually been confirmed, however, is already strange enough to warrant suspicion, like the fact that blood was found in multiple rooms. Kind of strange for a scene where somebody shot themselves in the head. Splatters were found in the sink and a coagulated pool by the bathroom door, suggesting a potential struggle or some movement after the injury. The apartment appeared ransacked with knocked over trash, strewn items, and a half-eaten DoorDash meal he had ordered around 8:30 p.m. that night. On the lobby CCTV, it seems to have been picked up normally, but was left unfinished in the apartment as if he had been interrupted. Surveillance cameras in the garage and one in the elevator were inexplicably offline, with wires either cut or disconnected. His final sighting shows him appearing relaxed as he strolls to the door to collect his final meal. But when he gets into the elevator to go up to his fourth-floor apartment, the footage stops as the camera inside was inoperable. His mother shared a photo from inside the elevator showing unplugged cables dangling from the ceiling in the corner, apparently highlighting the inoperable camera. There are plenty of other strange facts in this case as well. For instance, a torn wig fragment was discovered in a blood clot, and Balaji didn't own a wig. Some have speculated about the possibility of this coming from a disguised intruder, but obviously it's impossible to say for sure. His family and the investigative journalist claims that a backup drive containing potential OpenAI-related testimony was absent from his ransacked apartment, with smaller drives and other devices which potentially contained evidence related to his whistleblowing, all missing from the apartment. The second autopsy apparently noted blunt force trauma, a fractured cheekbone, and a contusion on the back of his head, injuries omitted from initial reports that could indicate assault. The elevated GHB levels also raised suspicion of drugging to subdue him, and a damaged wall suggested a bullet or object impact. Blood-stained earbuds were also found at the scene. The official narrative is that Balaji, under stress from leaving his prestigious job and the weight of his public stance, took his own life, perhaps exacerbated by alcohol and substance abuse. However, others believe it was murder orchestrated to silence a key witness whose testimony could devastate one of the largest American AI companies in court. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has called the death a great tragedy, but insists it's suicide, offering to speak with the family, who declined. He denies any involvement. Automatic license plate readers. I imagine many of you have seen these around your neighborhoods and cities in recent years. Many of us, especially those of us in denser population centers, probably drive right past these several different times every day. So what are they? These are automated license plate readers, or ALPRs. And yeah, I'm sure now that I've brought them to your attention, You're like, oh yeah, I've seen those a lot. Well, you're about to start noticing them even more. These high-speed camera systems use optical character recognition to automatically capture every license plate, logging the exact date, time, and location they were detected. And in case it hasn't already been made clear, this is a way of tracking you, physically. Would we throw a fit if these cameras were tracking us with facial recognition? Probably. And why? Because they'd know exactly where you are all the time, right? Well, what's the difference with this system, really? If one of these cameras scans your license plate and sends that information to a database, you've effectively been tracked. Your position plotted with a date, time, location, and maybe if they're feeling a little extra, even your speed so they can send you an automated fine for driving a few miles per hour over the speed limit. ALPR technology has been integrated into society at large so slowly, so quietly, that we've all just kinda gone along with it without really thinking too much about it. We've all noticed the toll booths go empty before they were replaced by state-run ALPRs, but maybe we should have spoken up about this. Maybe it's too late to do anything. ALPRs typically send vast amounts of information to be stored indefinitely in massive databases. As a result of their widespread dispersal, essentially anyone with a car has already been tracked by this technology. Whether it's from those automated tolling cameras, or cameras mounted on streetlights, or cameras on highway overpasses, or police vehicles. If you live in a region with any significant population, your habits are already, at least partially, mapped in a database like this. One company leading the charge right now in this industry is Flock Safety, and they now perform over 20 billion scans of vehicles in the United States every single month. It's happening right now in thousands of communities across the country, often without residents even knowing these systems exist, let alone that they've been put in place. They just look like any old security camera. They fade into the background. Flock Safety has created the first nationwide mass surveillance system out of its customers' cameras, working with police departments, neighborhood associations, and private property owners. Legacy traffic cameras were set up to only activate when you run a red light, but these devices are different. They photograph every single vehicle that passes by, and through their integration of artificial intelligence in analyzing this data down to the scale of each and every individual, yeah, it gets scary. The system can identify a vehicle's make, model, color, and other distinguishing attributes like bumper stickers, mismatched body panels, and even dents. This vehicle fingerprint technology means that even if you swap plates or borrow a friend's car, the system can still track you through visual characteristics alone. Flock's stated goal is to expand to every city in the United States, and its cameras are already operational in over 5,000 communities across 49 states. Flock runs all plates against state police watch lists and the FBI's primary criminal database, the National Crime Information Center. The Digital Recognition Network, or DRN, a subsidiary of Motorola, provides its customers, typically those working in repossession, insurance, lending, or even private investigators, with real-time alerts and location data on whichever vehicle or license plate they're trying to track. This platform is almost more insidious than government surveillance because it's privately owned and operates entirely outside constitutional restraints. DRN has built its database by outsourcing the collection of information to over 600 repo men who drive around in unmarked cars with 4 camera kits that cost $15,000 each, scanning every license plate they pass. These affiliates are paid monthly bonuses for gathering data, creating a financial incentive to collect as much information as possible. DRN's system allows customers to look up a license plate in their system, and for just a little more money, they can even set up a live alert that sends an email notification every time that vehicle is spotted on one of the cameras in their network. It creates easy-to-read maps plotting every location where the vehicle was spotted. When reporters tested the system with a consenting subject, they found dozens of sightings spanning years, including photos of the car parked outside the owner's house and tracked across state lines during family visits. I'm sure it's not hard to see why this is absolutely fucking terrifying. As a result, a California class action lawsuit filed in 2021 describes DRN's business as an unchecked operation monitoring millions of ordinary citizens who are not the subjects of any criminal investigation. The lead plaintiff's vehicle was captured over 70 times, allowing DRN to create a complete timeline of his movements and gain access to his work and home addresses, which was then added to a marketing database available for sale without his awareness. The lawsuit currently involves approximately 23 million California vehicles, and with state law mandating a $2,500 minimum payout per victim, potential damages are well into the billions. Company executives have even admitted that unauthorized users have gained access to the system. Meanwhile, Customs and Border Protection agents have purchased access to DRN's database, and the system is also used by ICE and other federal agencies, creating a backdoor surveillance apparatus that acts as a powerful loophole in American Fourth Amendment rights against unlawful searches through essentially outsourcing the work to private companies. To me, the scariest part of this sort of mass surveillance infrastructure is how it can be implemented into predictive policing technologies like Palantir. Research indicates that the data collected from Flock Safety and from other ALPRs can easily be plugged into platforms like Palantir's Gotham, and this has been done in the past, primarily by law enforcement agencies. Flock has also been financially backed by Palantir's billionaire founder, Peter Thiel, which is not too much of a shocker. It's really interesting to me how, as we go farther down this iceberg, it seems like more and more of the dots start to connect, and we see kind of the same names popping up over and over and over again. DARPA Insect Allies. I debated whether or not I should save this one for the Doomsday Scenarios iceberg because it could easily fit into there too. Before we begin, we have to define what HEGAAs are. Horizontal Environmental Genetic Alteration Agents are engineered infectious agents, more specifically genetically modified plant viruses, which are designed to perform automatic gene editing functions once they have been intentionally released into natural environments. The goal of them is to infect and therefore alter the genetic material of their target organisms. The word horizontal refers to their ability to spread from organism to organism through the infections rather than by passing genetically through generations, which takes a much longer time to spread through a population. The technological framework for these HEGAAs emerged directly from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, better known as DARPA, in late 2016 through a program called Insect Allies. According to them, this was only designed for agricultural purposes. DARPA committed $45 million over 4 years to what it framed as a solution to emerging threats to American food security, specifically crop failures caused by climate change, novel pathogens, pests, or deliberate attacks on agricultural systems. Over 70% of known plant viruses are transmitted by insects, which means insects naturally spread viral agents from plant to plant. The Insect Allies program has proposed exploiting this fact by genetically modifying both the plant virus and the carrier insects to benefit agriculture. In other words, the insects can be engineered to better deliver the virus on wider scales, and the plants can receive the genetic edits to their chromosomes, which will take effect within a single growing season. Sound terrifying? Feel like there's a million ways this could go wrong and absolutely destroy everything we know and love? Feel like maybe we shouldn't be messing around with engineering an insect-spread virus capable of modifying genetic information? Well, obviously, you're not alone. Controversy has also emerged regarding the technology's potential for use as a horrifying weapon system. Maybe now's a good time to remind you that the first word in the name of the agency running this whole program is defense. DARPA's entire purpose is to develop defense technology for the US military. In October 2018, researchers from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Biology, the University of Freiburg, and the University of Montpellier published a devastating critique in Science magazine, arguing that while peaceful agricultural justifications do exist, the Insect Allies program appears specifically suited to covert or aggressive applications rather than transparent agricultural deployment, because for actual agricultural purposes, simpler, safer, and more reliable methods exist, like the simple overhead spraying of viral agents rather than deploying them through insects. They added that insect allies could constitute a breach of the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention if the knowledge developed becomes weaponized to deliberately damage other nations' food supplies through the creation of crop-destroying edits rather than crop-protecting gene edits. It would be even worse, potentially world-ending, if it were to be reverse-engineered to spread gene-editing viruses to humans, which is one of the scariest things I've ever heard of. Later discrepancies have been uncovered which called DARPA's transparency regarding the program into question. Initial program descriptions emphasized heritable chromosomal modifications which would remain within the plants and continue on into future generations. This contrasted with their later reassurances about transient expression, which claimed that these edits would not be permanently affecting the plant's genomes. This raised some eyebrows about the program's true intentions, full scope, and the actual implications if something like this were to actually be executed into the wild. Jonathan Pollard. Jonathan Pollard was a civilian Navy counterintelligence analyst who became one of the most damaging spies in American history, uncovering an unbelievable volume of classified secrets for the United States' beloved ally, Israel, during the mid-1980s. Born in 1954 in Galveston, Texas, Pollard worked as an intelligence analyst for the Naval Investigative Service, which later became the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, or NCIS. From June 1984 until his arrest in November 1985, he engaged in espionage for Israel. What makes this case particularly disturbing is just how much classified material he managed to steal in such a short time frame. He worked at the Navy Field Operational Intelligence Office in Maryland, where he held a high-level security clearance that gave him access to some of the most sensitive intelligence in the entire United States government. He was able to access classified materials from the NSA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and intelligence summaries on the Middle East, North Africa, and the Indian Ocean. Apparently, Pollard expressed the fact that he was deeply pro-Israel, and coworkers even later testified that this political enthusiasm for a foreign nation made them feel uneasy. His intelligence ties to Israel seem to have begun in May of 1984 when Pollard encountered an Israeli Air Force colonel named Aviam Sela in the US. Beneath his military record, Sela was also an intelligence operative. During their initial social conversations, Pollard revealed that he worked for US naval intelligence and complained that America was withholding intelligence from Israel, a supposedly close ally. He volunteered his services as an informant to Israel, and after their meeting, Sela reported his willingness to spy on America to Mossad officer Rafai Eitan, the head of LACOM, an Israeli intelligence agency. By late June of 1984, Pollard was formally recruited as a paid agent of Israeli intelligence. At the reins from Israel, Rafai Eitan orchestrated the operation from afar, guiding Pollard, requesting which specific pieces of intelligence he was to obtain. Pollard then began to steal classified documents from the Navy and various intelligence agencies and deliver them to Israeli handlers at apartments in the Washington area nearby the Israeli embassy. Something like 2 to 4 times a month, suitcase after suitcase of documents would be transferred to Israeli intelligence operatives. This continued for something like 18 months. After comparing a variety of sources, it seems that Pollard stole approximately 1 million pages of classified U.S. intelligence documents and provided them all to Israel in this period of time. Pollard himself estimated that he delivered some 360 cubic feet of material, from which researchers have derived the 1 million figure. Pollard provided satellite reconnaissance photographs of PLO headquarters in Tunisia, which the Israelis used to plan and execute Operation Wooden Leg, a bombing raid in October of 1985. He even delivered the NSA's 10-volume radio and signal intelligence manual, which was an all-in-one guide on how the U.S. gathered and analyzed intercepted communications. It was essentially the instructions for America's entire global eavesdropping network. It detailed which countries, frequencies, satellites, and signal types the NSA monitored, how intercepts were processed, and what decoding methods were used. It revealed where U.S. listening posts were located and what they were capable of hearing. Placing this book into the possession of Israeli intelligence gave them the power to evade United States surveillance, or even to exploit it. This was one of the largest catastrophes which resulted from Pollard's actions because it forced the American intelligence community to rebuild massive parts of its intelligence infrastructure since it had been leaked, essentially in its entirety. This cost the U.S. billions in taxpayer dollars and rendered massive intelligence architectures completely obsolete. For all of this, Israeli handlers paid Pollard approximately $50,000 in cash and promised an additional $300,000 over a 10-year period. In other words, he sold out the security of his home country, the United States, for money. By November of 1985, U.S. naval intelligence investigators and the FBI had already been tracking Pollard for weeks. In October, he was seen carrying a large bundle from his office to his wife's car, and when this was combined with other reports from coworkers claiming they had seen him removing classified documents that he had no reason to access, he was placed under surveillance. On the morning of the 21st of November, Pollard and his wife Anne absolutely lost it when they noticed surveillance teams following them. They floored it, driving all the way to the Israeli embassy, where he attempted to seek asylum under Israel's law of return. This law was designed to allow Jewish people from anywhere in the world the right to immigrate to Israel, but that law didn't work in the way Pollard had hoped it did. Pollard and his wife ran inside, but Israeli security personnel were already prepared to deny any and all involvement in Pollard's espionage, claiming it was an unauthorized rogue operation. If Israel allowed him asylum, especially with the FBI on his tail right outside the embassy walls, it would have instantly confirmed Israeli complicity in the operation, and it would have triggered a major diplomatic disaster with the United States, who they depend on for survival. Furthermore, as it turns out, Rafael Eitan and Lakem were already in hot water with Israeli higher-ups, and Prime Minister Shimon Peres and Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin were absolutely furious because the entire operation with Pollard had been run without their oversight. Saving Pollard at that point would have meant admitting official guilt, something they were absolutely unwilling to do. As a result, Jerusalem ordered the embassy not to admit Pollard, and they obeyed. He was forced back outside, where FBI agents immediately arrested him. Jonathan Pollard would later plead guilty to conspiracy to deliver national defense information to a foreign government, a charge carrying a maximum life sentence. In March 1987, Judge Aubrey Robinson imposed exactly that sentence, making Pollard the only American ever sentenced to life imprisonment for spying on behalf of an allied nation. Later investigations into his background revealed a particular fanaticism for Israel. He's gone on record stating that he grew up with a, quote, racial obligation to support the state of Israel. While in college, several people who knew him even say he boasted about how he was a dual citizen of the United States and Israel. All that time ago, he claimed to have worked for Mossad, to be a colonel in the IDF, going so far as to send himself a telegram addressed to Colonel Pollard, and he even claimed to have killed an Arab while on guard duty while in Israel. Upon later research into his background, it was apparently uncovered that literally none of these claims were true. It seems like he was probably head over heels when he finally got a chance to sell out the US for them. Pollard served 30 years before his release on parole in November 2015, under which he was set to face strict lifetime supervision. This meant he couldn't leave the US without permission and faced ongoing restrictions. Then, on November 20th of 2020, about 2 months before Trump left office, the U.S. Parole Commission terminated Pollard's parole early, lifting all restrictions and freeing him to travel abroad. This cleared the way for him to finally immigrate to Israel. He received Israeli citizenship before moving to the country on December 30th of 2020. Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, hailed it as a historic and moving moment, and it was widely viewed as a final pro-Israel gesture from the outgoing Trump administration. Since his relocation to Israel, he has publicly advocated for a forced population transfer of Gaza's Palestinians to Ireland. Where have I heard that one before? Oh, yeah. Just as a little cherry on top here, if you remember Aviam Sella from earlier, the guy who actually recruited Jonathan Pollard, well, apparently Donald Trump actually pardoned him on the morning of his final day as president during his first term, like literally hours before Joe Biden was sworn in. So this was one of his final acts as president. It's stuff like this that makes me lose my faith in the entire two-party system establishment that we're kind of stuck with right now. Like, why is any president, Democrat or Republican, pardoning accomplices in foreign espionage? We've been let down so many times, Democrat and Republican voters alike. I just think we deserve so much more, and hopefully one day we can get it. Pegasus Spyware. Pegasus is one of the most sophisticated military-grade surveillance weapons ever created, and it could literally be sitting inside your phone right now. There's literally no way for you to find out. Pegasus is essentially a piece of malware designed to exploit vulnerabilities in mobile operating systems, primarily iOS and Android, allowing for remote installation and control. Once installed, it can read your text messages, listen in on your phone calls, track your location, steal your passwords, read your emails, turn on your microphones and cameras, and even siphon information from third-party messaging apps like WhatsApp or Telegram. It's so advanced and so unavoidable that it's evolved to utilize zero-click exploits, meaning you literally don't have to do anything for it to be installed. You don't even have to open an infected email or click a link. It can infect your phone through a missed call, an invisible message that doesn't even pop up in your messaging app, or even through network injections via rogue cell towers. It was created by the Israeli cyber intelligence firm NSO Group. I swear I didn't know it was Israeli until I started looking into it for this video, but I can't say I'm surprised. The firm was founded by Niv Karmi, Shaliv Julio, and Omri Levi in 2010. Julio and Levi initially created technology that allowed tech support workers to remotely access customers' phones with permission. But when a European intelligence agency showed interest in what they had created, they realized they could develop something far more powerful. A tool that could infiltrate phones without user authorization. They brought on Karmi, a former Mossad and military intelligence operative, to help market this invisible weapon to governments worldwide. Some reports theorize that Shaliv and Omri also had intelligence ties, but it's difficult to say, though all three at least have some connection to the Israeli military due to the state's mandatory service requirements. NSO Group has over 700 employees globally, with almost all of their research team being made up of former Israeli military intelligence personnel. It seems most of them have served for some period of time in Israel's Military Intelligence Directorate, and many of these in Israel's Unit 8200. Early on in 2011, dispersal of their malware was conducted through spear phishing tactics, or the targeting of specific individuals or organizations who were tricked by clicking malicious links. NSO claims it sells only to vetted governments for fighting crime and terrorism, with contracts which require ethical use. But the technology's sophistication, including self-destruct features if it goes undetected for 60 days, makes it a powerful covert surveillance tool. Your phone could receive a missed WhatsApp call or an iMessage you never even opened, and within seconds, Pegasus would be embedded deep within your device. Once installed, it becomes a ghost. It leaves virtually no trace of its existence. NSO is constantly uncovering new vulnerabilities to stay ahead of security patches from Apple and Google, maintaining a surplus of exploits. As a result, it appears the malware is capable of infecting even the most up-to-date versions of iOS and Android. Despite NSO's marketing, Pegasus has been deployed far beyond legitimate targets, often by authoritarian regimes to silence dissent. The 2021 Pegasus Project, a collaborative investigation by Amnesty International and Forbidden Stories, exposed a leaked list of over 50,000 phone numbers selected for surveillance since 2016, spanning more than 50 countries. Confirmed infections hit journalists, activists, elite politicians, and even heads of state. There were over 600 politicians and government officials on this list, among them French President Emmanuel Macron. Human rights activists, lawyers, business executives, and even religious figures appeared on this list. Forensic analysts of 67 phones from the list revealed that 37 showed traces of Pegasus activity, with 23 having been successfully infected. Some of the most chilling deployments of Pegasus involve journalist and Saudi dissident Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered and dismembered by Saudi operatives in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October 2018. It was later revealed that Pegasus spyware had been used to target people in Khashoggi's inner circle, including his fiancée and Jeff Bezos, whose phone was hacked in 2018 after dining with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. NSO Group has consistently denied any connection to the murder, claiming they investigated and found no evidence their technology was used on Khashoggi or his family, but forensic evidence tells a different story. In India, it targeted opposition leaders, ministers, and over 40 journalists between 2017 and 2021. Leaders in Hungary and Poland have employed it against political rivals. It was found to have been successfully installed on the personal phone of Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain. The governments of France and UK have also been targeted, with Pegasus found on devices of officials and reporters. Pegasus allows governments and deeply corrupt parties to monitor dissenters, to collect crippling information on their opponents before blackmailing them into submission, or orchestrate disappearances by utilizing citizens' own devices to track them before removing them altogether. The zero-click aspect of the malware is what's most disturbing. If certain parties want to track you, watch you on your phone camera, listen to you through your microphone, track your whereabouts, see who you're calling, texting, emailing, what you're viewing in your browser, they can. It turns the devices we essentially can't live without anymore into constant spies, something akin to a digital panopticon where we never know if we're being watched or not, and as a result, we obey. WhatsApp and Apple have both sued NSO, and the United States Department of Commerce blacklisted NSO in 2021, banning its tech after diplomats were infected with Pegasus, and in 2023, an executive order was passed prohibiting commercial spyware in the United States. The Israeli government maintains a tight grip over NSO and their Pegasus software because it's classified as a military-grade cyber weapon. meaning NSO can't sell or deploy it without approval from Israel's Ministry of Defense. Only foreign governments and state security agencies which Israel approves of are permitted to purchase and use it. They've historically used this control over Pegasus sales as diplomatic leverage as well, approving contracts with countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Morocco, and Azerbaijan to advance Israeli foreign policy interests, particularly in building a coalition against Iranian interests. They've also blocked sales to countries like Estonia and Ukraine to avoid angering Russia. Allegations from 2022 allege that Israeli police used Pegasus, or a variant of it, to target protesters and even local officials without warrants, though the government denies this. Regardless, this tool, which only claims to be used against threats, has instead empowered the powerful to monitor the helpless, those of us who can't function in the modern world without a connection to the internet.